Hi, I'm Eric Ostro, host of Live at the Lortel. For Season 3, we are focusing on the intersection of arts and advocacy. So many off-Broadway artists give back to their communities. This season, we are giving them the opportunity to speak about how and why they chose the causes they devote themselves to, and how those causes help make them the people and artists they are today. Good evening, everybody. I'm Eric Ostro, one of the hosts of Live at the Lortel. We have a great show, so I'm going to get right to it. Let me introduce my co-host for the evening, my dearest friend, Joy D. Michelle. Joy?
Hello, Eric. Hello. How are you this
Hi, my
evening?
darling. How are you?
I'm great. And you?
Good. I'm good. It looks good. I'm excited to talk to this guest, so let's bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Arturo Luis Soria. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Welcome.
you for coming. We're so happy you're here. Um, First, I want to ask how you're doing. Obviously, since the world shut down about 18 months ago, where were you? What were you doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I feel very blessed to be in good health and to be in good company. Um, what I was doing, I mean, I was in the middle of the run of The Inheritance on Broadway when the theater shut down. It was a wild experience to sort of like show up on that Wednesday and do this show, and then like we just had heard buzz that the NBA had been shutting down and certain things had been shutting down, and we're backstage being like, this might be the last time we bow, and it indeed was. And it was wild to learn about like the theaters being shut down the next day. It was like on the way to work, and all of a sudden it's like Playbill.com releases Broadway's closed. Get a phone call. You're like, please come up and pick up your stuff. It was like a wild ride. And then I was in New York for a little bit, and then I went to be with some family in Florida for a little bit, and then I traveled across the country and sort of was out in the West for the majority of the pandemic, and then found my way back again in January. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey these last 18 months.
Well, I mean, congratulations. I mean, The Inheritance swept last night at the Tonys. I mean, unbelievable. Lois Smith and
Yeah.
Matthew Lopez and The Inheritance won. I mean, what does that feel like? I mean, you guys were going to close. Obviously, the pandemic closed you before, it was unfortunate. I don't know why it was going to close, but how incredible for last night and what happened.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. I was really proud of everybody. We gathered after the Tonys. It was nice to be reunited with everybody and to be reunited in celebration, which is a great way to come back together. We sort of left, parted ways with the pandemic, but then came back together with the Tonys. And it was, the energy was hot, and everyone was really thrilled, and I was really proud of the team, and it was great to see all of them again. And I was so excited to see Miss Lois out. She was out there sitting, chilling with her Tony. It was nice to give her a big old hug and congratulate her, and to see Matthew and Andrew and Stephen. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
So from the pandemic to the Tonys, how did you feel? How did you feel most of that time? Did you write a lot, or did you spend most of your time with family? What did you do to keep your juices flowing during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a lot. I traveled a lot, which was great. I mean, sort of, it was, I had a couple losses in the family, and so that sort of took me out of New York and took me back home to be with family. So I spent a lot of time with family, and sort of recovering after losing some loved ones. And there was a lot of travel, so I'd spend a lot of time on the road. I would camping with my partner, and we sort of like spent some time in national parks, which was, I mean, incredibly healing and magnificent. And I felt, like, to be out in that much space and to realize that like there's this vast world out there, and that we are but only this big in the grand scheme of things, and in ways it's healing. So I spent a lot of time outdoors, and yeah, and then I made my way back to New York in January, and have been writing nonstop. Been writing and working nonstop, both on, you know, several other pieces that I've been working on, which is cool.
You know, and then we're talking about the inheritance. You know, Lois's speech last night really hit me hard when she talked about, you know, E.M. Foster's, you know, what he says about only connect. I'd love to get your point of view on the inheritance and the show, and being a part of the show, and the connection that all you guys had within the show, and what the whole experience was like for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I felt so blessed to be a part of this production from the beginning. I mean, you know, like, to make my debut in this beautiful play with this team of incredible artists. I mean, exquisite artists. I felt like I was being pushed, you know, artistically and humanely, one of the two. You know, because one is like working with I mean, Stephen Daldry is just a master. I mean, he is a genius. And Justin Martin, who was also working on the play, another genius. And everyone was working at such a high level. I mean, I think the expectation walking into it was quite fun, because it was like, I just remember that first day of rehearsal, and they're like, okay, great, speeches, meet everybody, great. And like Stephen and sits down and he goes, okay, so this is how I work, and this is how we're going to work on it this way. We're not going to do table work. We're not going to read this play. We're just going to dive right in. And he's like, great, cool. So you're sitting over there, and you're sitting over there, and you're sitting over there, you're sitting over there. And this is how we're going to start going. And that first week, all of us had these binders, and we were like, okay, cool. And it's like, you quickly realize how much movement is in the show. And so it just like made you work at your highest level. You're like, great, memorized. Got it done. And Stephen would be like, are we not off book yet? Okay, great, cool. So let's get off book. You know, it's like, it was just like that first week we were flying out the gate, and it definitely pushed me a lot. I was like, whoa, okay, this is not typical, and I need to be working at that level immediately. Which I think like allowed for us to, as an ensemble, to immediately grab onto each other and to be like, okay, we are the moving parts of this massive ship, and we have to be tight, and we have to be on it, because this thing is going to take off, and we are the ones literally like fueling the ship. So I think it pushed us to work at a really high level, which allowed us to connect quickly, right? To come back to the point of only connect, it allowed us to sort of become family really quickly. And I mean, we spent a lot of time together. And so last night, being able to see, you know, the other young men, and to be able to see Lois was such a coming home in some way, because we haven't seen each other for 18 months. You know, the last time I saw Miss Lois was, you know, the day that we closed on March, I think it was March 12th, March 12th to 13th. It was, you know, that's the last time I saw Stephen, the last time I saw anybody. It was that day. And seeing some of the other men, it was like seeing them and being like, boom, we're back, you know, which is great. And in terms of like the audience, it was really moving every night to look out at the audience and see people crying, or to see people, you can look out at the audience and just sort of gather who had lost somebody, or knew somebody who lost somebody, or a family member. You can sort of feel that. You can feel people like opening up. You can feel people healing. You can feel people grieving. You can feel it. And there's this sort of collective grieving moment for everybody. And that was powerful. It was really powerful. As someone, you know, I didn't live through the heights of the AIDS epidemic, you know. And so to feel like, but to be like close enough to have inherited it, right? And to be able to look at some people who are older than I was, who knew people, were affected by people, lost people. It was really powerful to feel that. And so, yeah, it just reminds you of like people's humanity, and how people are going through going through. You don't know what they're going through. You know, they could be going through all sorts of things.
You know,
When you I'm sorry. When you first auditioned for this, did you feel it inside of you that this was going to be this kind of play? It was going to be this important. And did you feel it when you auditioned for it that this role was for you?
Definitely felt it when I auditioned for it. I was like, I was like, I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna definitely go and get this. It was, you know, and I think that when I feel like that connected to something, I'm gonna work really hard and make it happen. And I went in there and I had a great time, and I liked the way they did auditions. It's like they sort of, you know, brought people in and gave you a scene and, you know, individually worked it. But the final callback was they put ensembles together, and which is really cool because I've never been in like a major audition like that where they're like, cool, we're going to put a whole bunch of people in a room together and start directing you as an ensemble. And you are just moving and flying and doing this. Like, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go in there and I'm going to have a ball playing this character and playing with other people in the room. And I remember, I'm sure Matthew and Stephen would have some stories and you would have some stories about that audition, but I was like on tables, I was rolling around, I was all over the place and just like, you know, living. So I felt like, and they kept me, because they sort of split it up in groups. There's like group 1 and group 2. And they kept me the whole day. And I was like, whew. I was like, I better get it after that because I'm worked out. That was like a full day of work, you know. I think it was a great time.
And you played Jason too.
I did.
And you didn't obviously, you know, you didn't go to London with it, but talk to us about how Matthew and you were able to kind of put a little bit of your Latino flair onto the character.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew was really gracious enough. He came to me in the first week and he was like, you know, I really want you to bring yourself to this. And I want you to bring, you know, feel free to like incorporate Spanish into the mix. And I thought that's something that I have done as an artist before in other plays. That's something that I enjoy doing. That's something that in my own writing, you know, I work with multilingual. And so I will incorporate Spanish and Portuguese. And for me, it always comes down to like, I think it's, for me, it's like, I feel like it's not enough to just see ourselves reflected on the stage, but to also hear ourselves reflected on the stage, you know. And I think about that specifically, you know, when it comes to like my abuela, when she would come to the theater, or my papi would come to the theater, is like my family come to the theater. I want them, like my tias and, you know, my parents, when they come to the theater, I want them to be able to not only see it, parts of themselves on stage, but to also hear parts of themselves on stage, to like sit in the audience and go like, oh, I know that rhythm, I know that word, I know that language. And that's important to me because I would take my abuela to the theater all the time. And, you know, when she was living, and, you know, she would enjoy it, the spectacle or the music or anything else, but she couldn't understand the language sometimes, you know, and that was difficult for her. And so it was important for me to, as a writer, you know, to always incorporate things into my writing where it's like she can sit in the audience and hear something that is for her and doesn't need to be translated. And that, you know, audiences can still get it, you know, because that's the experience that, you know, my abuela and also like other immigrants, my papi, my parents, that's the experience a lot of immigrants have in this country, is they sort of, you know, they operate in the world and have to gather information, but may not understand everything. And so it's always important for me. So Matthew was gracious enough to let me put some Spanish into the thing, and we talked about it, and I found ways to layer it in. And we talked about, let's keep this word, or we got to keep this line in English, so that way it's, you know, understandable. And so he allowed me to really work on bringing that to the script. Yeah, and that was new to this production, and that was
Right.
Not in London,
Which I loved.
Yeah,
you know, the audience becomes a part of the play,
Yeah.
because a lot of the characters come out into the audience.
Mhm.
And the part 2 I saw, I was sitting in the second row on the aisle, so they were jumping onto my chair and,
Mm-hmm.
interacting with us. But I was with my friend Lou Liberatore, who's a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
And Lou, when he broke down, that was the end. There was no consoling him. There was the audible crying that I'm sure you guys heard on the stage, not only of Lou, but of many people that within that generation that lost so many people to the AIDS epidemic. I mean, what was that like I know you said a little bit about it, but I'm sure there were many people in the audience that the audible crying and sobbing was that you took in, that you could hear and be a part of.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, there were so many curtain calls. Like, we'd come to the end of the show and you'd look out and just people just, wet with tears, just sobbing. And a lot of those people stayed after at the stage door, and they'd come over and they'd, with tears in the eyes, and sometimes they'd just be like, "Can I have a hug? Thank you so much." I remember one person said that they flew in all the way from San Francisco to see this play, and that they had lost several people, important people in their lives. And a lot of people saying thank you, a lot of thank yous, which was powerful. And also just reminds you of, like, one, the power of theater, and two, the responsibility of an artist. And also just as an actor, is to bring that level of humanity every single time you step out on stage, because you don't know who you're affecting, and you don't know who you're touching, and you don't know who in the audience needs to hear the story, whether it be this play or any play. It's like, that's the job of the actor, is to walk out on stage and bring a level of humanity, because you don't know who in the audience you're affecting. And it was a powerful experience. And also just like remind, you feel like you sort of like have the responsibility to show up every night in your fullness.
Let's talk a little bit about the show you just finished, which I saw last week, and then I streamed again this weekend just to make sure I didn't miss anything. A play that you wrote called Ni Mi Madre, which played at the Rattlestick Theater. Talk to me about the play. I mean, I could talk to you about it for hours, but I think you're here to talk about. You wrote it and starred in it, and let me hear you talk about, the seed that was planted where that grew into this incredible production.
Thank you. Yeah, I started writing it actually in a class in my undergrad, a solo performance class in 2008. We were having to, part of the class is that every week you're churning out new 5-minute solo performance pieces. You're generating material all the time. I don't remember what the prompt was, but I was starting to write about my childhood and writing about it in, like, I come writing about it with humor, coming from a place of like, let me poke fun at my childhood and like make light of all the things that are funny. I started to write about it from my perspective, my position, and it just wasn't funny. But I knew that there was still more for me to explore. Like, there were some pieces that I threw out. I was like, I'm not coming back to that. But this piece, I was like, I want to keep coming back to. So one day I decided, I was like, it's not landing the way I wanted to land. And I put on a dress, I threw on a robe, I came into class, and I said, I'm just going to be my mother and start talking about me from her perspective. And it landed. It, like, people in the classroom were laughing. They were moved, like taken aback by it, by like the, like, whoa, this like sort of like disjointed feeling of like, I'm watching him play his mother talk about him. And I would kind of walk out on stage with all of my journals, and I would like read my journals and comment on them. And it sort of began. And then I was like, okay, there's something here. We had our final presentation. It was like a 10-minute or 20-minute final performance. And I was like, there's something here. And I spent the next, decade and a half working on it, and I started out by improvising it in front of live audiences. And the secret is, is like I had learned about Luis Alfaro, who is like, a mentor to me. And I had learned about his one solo show called Cuerpo Politizado. And he would be in this like black slip dress, and he would eat an entire box of Twinkies and drink an entire bottle of tequila. And that's how he would perform his show. And so I learned about that. I had already known about John Leguizamo's work and Freak, and that's what sort of inspired me to like write about my childhood. So I remember learning about Luis Alfaro, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put on this dress, and then I'm gonna bring a full bottle of wine on stage with me, and I'm gonna drink the wine as I talk like my mother, really, really fast in front of a live audience, and I would improvise the entire show. And at the end of an hour, I would finish, and I would have an hour's worth of material that I would then transcribe, because I would record them, transcribe, and sort of cut them, paste them, and edit them together. And I would do it again, and I would do it again until I started to shape and shape and shape and shape and shape. And then I started to, and then I finally met Luis, and he gave me permission to treat it like a play. And he said, I want you to treat this like a play and write a play out of this. And that's when I started to sort of like find the arc. And it's been 13 years of working on it and shaping it and cultivating it and keep growing it. And eventually when I got to Yale, I met my director, Danilo Gambini, who's a brilliant, brilliant director. And he read it, he loved it, and he was like, I know what this is. And he brought the added element of Iemanjá and Brazil. And we started to cultivate that, and sort of until we shaped it into the piece that it is today. And so it's come a long way. And it's evolved with me, and I've grown with it. And it's like, as I continue to grow and learn more about myself, and also things were happening in my family, like they sort of found their way into the play,
It's a fascinating process. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you.
What is your, I mean, I'm fascinated now, and I'm obsessed with your mother. I mean, seeing you portray her on stage, talk about, from her point of view, the relationship that the two of you have was something I've never really seen on stage before. It is so, I mean, you opened you as, the artist, opening your heart, portraying your mom, speak about your relationship, speak about her son in the first person, yet it's you playing her. I mean, it never got confusing in any way. I mean, it was very, very clear and concise. But what was that like to speak about the relationship that you have with her as her? And go ahead, please.
No, I mean, to be honest, I mean, at first it was really scary, like it's quite scary to be that vulnerable, and to be opening up about that and about a lot of different things. And I mean, the thing about it is like, I feel like in my house, or in my, a lot of Latino cultures, we use humor to sort of talk about pain, or we use humor to talk about things. And I've been studying my mom my entire life. I've been watching her my entire life. I used to put on her shoes and want to just like, I've been watching her my whole life. So it's like, and she's this over the top, storyteller. I mean, you sit with her at a dinner, and she's got the whole room in the palm of her hand. She's like owns the space, and she loves to tell stories, and she's quite whimsical at times. And I think that the way she strings words together have always intrigued me, or the way that she speaks really fast, because that she's thinking even faster. And I think that like I've admired that about her, her ability to do such a thing, and to be so bold. and also like say some really complicated things, you know, and you're like, oh, mommy, no, no, you know, but you you know, in my family, we poke fun at her, we play with her, you know, we do that all the time. It's a way of showing cariño, affection, you know, like, and so I think it was scary. I mean, I remember in the beginning, in the early days of working on this, I was scared to talk so much. I felt like, you know, what am I doing, you know, but I mean, looking at artists like, you know, John Leguizamo, Luis Alfaro, like Roger Guinevere Smith, you know, these artists that inspired me who were being bold. I remember like reading an interview with John Leguizamo, and he was like, you know, we all have that child in us that wants to get a word in, you know, and say, you know, and I think that I ran with that. It has also been really healing. I mean, I think that putting on that dress and becoming my mother allowed me to understand her deeper and to know her more. And to offer her, you know, I think, you know, when I think about it, it's the best gift I could give her, or the best gift I could give any character, or the best gift I could give anybody, is to humanize them, right? Is to give them their humanity. And I think that's what we do as actors. And I think that's what I attempt to do as a writer. And I think that's what I attempt to do in this play with my mother, is to humanize her and to not sort of reduce her to a two-dimensional character, good or bad, but to show her complexity. And I think in that process, I've also healed a lot about myself, and I've allowed me to sort of like look at her as a human being, and not as my mother for a moment, and not as a superhero, but as a human being, and be like, she was a girl, she was a young woman, she was a woman before she was a mother, you know? Yeah.
Tell me some of it is extremely painful. I mean, and yes, of course, I mean, we all find humor and laughter in some pain, of course, but can you tell the story of how you would ring the doorbell? I think I just found that so heartbreaking yet hysterically funny.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that scene in the play where she's like, you know, Arturo used to come home from school, and he would and I would lock the door on him, so he would have to ring the doorbell. And my mom definitely did that, and it was like, you know, in my mom's mind, it was like very harmless fun, you know. It was like she would do it, and then she'd be laughing, and you know, my siblings would be laughing about it. But it was a story I never forgot, because there was that like moment of like, oh my God, I'm not her child, she doesn't want me to be her child, and everything else, you know. And the drama, of course, the drama comes up, and you're like, no, but you know. And I think that my mom, you know, for her, it's like, you know, harmless fun. I'm playing a joke on you, I'm playing a prank on you, I'm pranking you. And I guess when I was writing this, and I was talking up there and it coming out, is like, it was both things, right? Like, I'm able to sit back now and look at it and laugh at it and think it's really funny, and to poke fun at it in the play, and it comes up in this really, you know, funny way, and the way that it's sort of like crafted it lands with a joke. But I remember as a kid, I was like devastated. I was like, oh my God, you know, I don't live here. She doesn't live. I don't live here, you know. Yeah.
So you would ring the doorbell, and
I would ring the doorbell,
and she would say,
yeah, she would look at me. So she'd be like, you know, the whole thing is like, so Arturo would ring the doorbell, and he's out there choreographing dances. It's like, you know, kick, turn, lift your leg, cosa mariconeria que yo no sé. You know, mariconeria means gay shit. So he's ringing the doorbell, and I open the door. Hello, sweetie, can I help you? Mommy, it's me. Hello, honey, are you looking for your mommy? But mommy, it's me. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I don't have children. But mommy, you should try next door. And I would close the door on him, but I would open it, and he's laughing, you know, he's crying, and I pick him up, and I nibble into a bit. And it was always like that. It was like, you know, she like played the joke on me, and then she'd be like, oh, I'm just playing with you. You know that I love you. You know that you're my baby. You know that I love you. I love you more than anybody in the whole wide world. And, you know, and you know, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. We as siblings, you know, we would do things like that to each other all the time, you know, and then, you know, she would do things like that to us as well.
Yeah. And what is her point of view about this play? And has she seen it? And
she's seen every iteration of it since the beginning.
Okay.
And she's been on a journey with it as well. You know, like I think that she's grown and evolved with it as I've evolved with it and the play's evolved with it. And I think in the beginning, I told her I did it and she thought it was very funny. And, it was like a short recording from the class and my family watched and they all thought it was funny. And she was like, oh my God, Tyler Perry, he does Medea. You should do me. You should do me. I could see movies and I could see TV shows and I could see all place. And she was super into it, And of course, because a glutton for punishment, I keep digging because in the beginning it was like very much a comedy. And then I was like, I keep digging and I'm like, but what is the real play here? What is the real question at the heart of this play? Because I didn't want it to just be a stand-up routine. I really wanted it to be a play because I felt like a play existed. And so I kept digging. So I keep digging. And she's like, oh God, why do you keep digging? Why do you keep going down that road? And, but I will say that she's been an amazing sport about it. And she's really funny because she's like, it's not me. It's a character. It's a character that he created, but then will call me and give me like 5 notes.
That's what I was just about to ask you.
Yep.
What notes has your mother given you that you've actually implemented?
Oh, I mean, my mother will always, she'll come and she'll be like, I didn't say it like this. I did it like this. I would never use that word. I would use this word. She's like, and I'd be like, Mommy, but I thought this wasn't you. I thought this was a character. It is. It's a character. But the character would never do it this way, And so I would take those and be like, I'd sit back and I'd be like, and that's like the crafting part of it is like, okay, yeah, I could change that. Yeah, I'll take that word and then be like, I can't do that because it doesn't make sense in the play. It doesn't make sense in the play. And so, there used to be this one scene where I would put on the shawl and I would put on the sunglasses with one lens. And I would say, I think if Arturo imagined what I looked like when I went to court, I'd look like this. And she would do this whole thing. And it was like this whole courtroom routine that eventually got cut. And my mom, when I told her she came to the play, she's like, why did you cut that scene? That was the best scene of the entire play. You have to put that scene back in. And I was like, I thought that it was, no. She's like, no. It has to go back into the play. You have to put it back into the play. And I'd be like, Mommy, it doesn't work. I have to cut it, That, and she always has something to say about the dress. Always has something to say about the dress.
What does she say?
Oh, she gives like 1,000 notes about the dress. She's like, no, it has to be like this last production. She like sent me a drawing of what she felt like it should look like. And she's like, it needs a flope. And I'm like, Mommy, what is a flope? She's like, it's a flope. And I'm like, Mommy, I don't know what a flope is. She's like, no. It's like a feather boa, but not feathers. It's a flope. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't help me. I have no idea what this. And so I showed it to the director, Danilo, and I'm like, she says she wants a flope. And he's like, what's a flope? And he's Brazilian too. And he's like, I don't know what a flope is. And so no one knew what this flope was. And so we finally sit down. I'm like, Mommy, what is a flope? She's like, I don't know. It's a word that I made up that I couldn't pronounce in French. I'm like, okay, great. And so she didn't get the flope she wanted, but I put the words in the play for her. She's like, Arturo's standing there in his pink pants, crop top, man per his nails, did in a flope. I put it in there for her so that at least she got her flope. But she didn't. Yeah. So, it was like some French word. Flat. I don't know what it was, but it was like something she couldn't say. So she made up a word to describe a material, which is what she does,
What is the, can you explain what the title means? Is it
Sure.
not my mother or nor my mother?
In Spanish, it's both, right? So it's ni, they mean nor my mother, not my mother. And in the context of the play, it's this line, she says, I wasn't ready to go back. I wasn't ready to face my past nor my pain, ni mi madre. So like in English, it would be, I wasn't ready to face my past nor my pain nor my mother, and so that's sort of like that, taking the ni mi madre is like, that's what it is. The nor my mother of like, what is it that we can't, what are the things that we can't face sometimes? And sometimes it's pain past, and sometimes it's a parent, sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a thing. And that's where it came from is like, and I think in some ways it came from myself, right? Is like the moment in time in my life where I wasn't ready to face certain things. And I think that this play was my opportunity, or my way of also facing all the things and giving it love, giving it humanity. Yeah.
It's wonderful to see how you've been able to bring yourself to the work that you're doing, all of who you are as a Latin man, all of who you are as part of the LGBTQ community. Eric and I are from a generation where bringing yourself to your craft was a real, real, real risk. And to see you do this now and know that you work with young people, what are some of the highlights and joys that you've had in being able to give young artists the permission to say, who you are is good enough? That plus this craft and this technique and this skill and all those things can make magic, right? So
yeah, that's such a great question, and I think it's, it took me time to get there. I think that, like, it's interesting is, like, I started out in my career professionally in 2009. That's when I graduated from undergrad. And so I think that the world was sort of like, we were just having the conversations we're having now about sexuality and gender and race. And like, I feel like, and it was really an interesting moment to come out. And I came out in the school in the middle of this recession. It's like trying to find work and all these other things. And I think that, when I was in my undergrad class, I was the only out queer person in my class. And that was at times really difficult, and I think there was a lot about, like, needing to move away from it, needing to move away from being that, so that you can be castable, so that you are not playing stereotype, you're not doing all these things, so you can be and that's where I was when I started. And there's a lot of sort of like shame that goes into that. There's a lot of like feeling like internalized shame of like, oh man, if I were straighter, if I were, whiter, if I were less this and that's, all of that went into that. And so there was a period of time when I was in Chicago when I was working and also really trying to be like quiet and not bring my fullness to it, and it was and I remember when I first started teaching in 2010. I started to teach an after-school theater program at Ames Middle School in Chicago. And then I started as a substitute teacher at Dr. Pedro Luis Campos Puerto Rican High School in Humboldt Park in Chicago. And I was even scared to bring my queerness to the classroom, right? I don't remember, like, I was teaching high school at 22 years old, 23 years old, and I was scared to bring my queerness to the classroom. I remember that first day of school. I had long hair back then too. And I had gotten the substituting job. I had never taught before. And I was like, okay, I'm about to go into this high school. And I was like, I don't know where people are going to be at with queerness, right? And that's I feel like that's also something that I know, just coming from the Latino community, is that, like, I mean, I heard my entire life by, family members and cousins and everything else is like, you got to be quiet about your sex life. You got to be quiet about your sexuality. You're still a man. You're still this. You're still that. You're still this. And so I'm coming in with all of that, and I'm coming into this high school, and I'm dealing with that, and then I'm in a Puerto Rican high school. So I'm like, oh my God, even more like, how we're gonna. And I'm coming into school with all of that, and I remember like, oh God, what am I gonna do with my hair? I'm like, I'm gonna tie it back into a ponytail, and I'm gonna put on this button-up shirt, and I'm gonna come in and, hey, my name is this, and like, and that performance at it could be is I feel like it's toxic to yourself, right? It's so toxic to yourself, and it's only toxic to other people, right?
And tiring.
Yeah, and tiring. And I came in and sort of felt out, and I started to see there was a lot of queer students and everything else, and I met this couple students who, like, were calling, they were bullying me, you know, because I was a queer teacher, and I got called names and everything else. And it was really interesting to have to like stand up for myself as a teacher, right? And be like, yo, this is, you know, like, this is, do you have a problem with me? Do you have a question that you want to ask me? You know, and having to put some students in the, but I think it gave me like, I think that experience also taught me to actually to speak up, because I saw a lot of queer students in that school, you know, getting harassed or talked about it. Like, and I was like realizing I need to be brave enough to stand up here. And so they pushed me, those kids pushed me to actually own more of myself. And I remember staying after school with some students who I knew were also queer, and we started to read some plays, and I started to read plays with them. And I started to read Lynn Nottage's play, Ruined, with one of my students. And this is a student who like a lot of other teachers wouldn't mess with, because, you know, she could be a lot. And I read that play with her. And one day we were reading this play, and she was getting so into the character. And it was early in the morning, and before classes began, and the principal comes running in because he thinks that something's going on. And he walks in behind her, and she can't see him. And we're just reading the play, and he sees that she's, you know, we're just reading, and he like slowly tips back out of the room. And that's when I was like, cool, I'm gonna start a theater program at this school, because something clicked for her. And then she was like opening up to me about like, I understand this character. I know this character. I understand what it's like, you know, and started to open up about her experiences, different things. And I started to do that. I started to read like little plays here and there. I started to read Trafficking in Broken Hearts by Edwin Sanchez with another student of mine. And he'd be like, he'd open up to me about his experiences, you know, being queer and living in the city. And that's when I started to realize, I was like, you know what? I need to own myself and stand in my power. And it was this one student of mine who has since that time transitioned, but just a beautiful soul. And we met, and I just like, I saw myself in her, right? And I like was like, I want to honor, right, these students by engaging them in theater. And I was working with an organization, About Face Youth Theater, and I invited them to come and meet other students from all over the city, and do theater, after school theater. And it was really, but I remember that one student because I went into an audition for Hit the Wall by Ike Holter. And I was playing this, you know, Tano. I got to originate that role. And it was another opportunity where Ike asked me, I want you to bring yourself to the role and incorporate it. And Ike and I worked on it, and I wrote a bunch of Spanish in that play. And I married his rhythm with my rhythm, and we created this character together. But I walked into that audition room and I said, I gotta bring my fullness to this, because that student, you know, if that student has to bring their fullness to school every day and has to face their demons or face other people out there, then I got to be able to bring it into the audition room, and I got to be able to bring it on stage, and I got to stop hiding. And I brought it in, and I put it all into it, and I got the part, and it was like, it was really nice because I felt for like the first time free to fly in that play. And I felt like, and that's when I realized that it's like, this is a superpower. Like, your queerness is a superpower, right? It's a superpower. And like, I realized it's like, I'm not going to allow it to stop me or to hold me back as an artist. And I'm not going to allow it to hold me back as an actor, and to believe that because I'm queer, I can't play all the other roles that my straight counterparts can play. And play, I could do their role and my role and do them well, you know. And like, and it was working in this work, the youth, and engaging with them and seeing them bring their fullness every day, that it allowed me to bring my fullness to the audition room. Because you can't escape. I can't escape my queerness, right?
No, you can't escape yourself. I mean, Joy and I went to school together. It's so funny that you said that. We graduated in '96, or I did, and you know, the gayness was beaten out of me. So when I got out of school, I didn't know who the F I was. You know, sometimes I'd go to an audition and you know, my voice would go much lower, and you know, I would stand differently. And I mean, I don't know today where I would be. You know, thank God you found your fullness and you brought it forward. Which comes to, you know, the causes that you do. I mean, you put a lot of time and energy into teaching arts to kids, and I know that you worked at the Harvey Milk School, and you've. That's what I'd love to talk a little bit about the causes that you get behind and what you're doing for it, and that you're bringing yourself to those causes.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe in the power of like theater education for students. I think that, you know, giving access to storytelling techniques, like, you know, I worked at Harvey Milk High School. When I moved to New York, I started to volunteer there because I was like teaching a lot in Chicago. I was working, you know, at different organizations, teaching after school theater, teaching ensemble and solo performance and writing and working with this youth. And when I got to New York, it just became this sort of like grind of like audition. And it was like, what is this leading towards? What am I doing when I'm not doing that? Like, in what ways can I re-engage with the community? Because it fills you up in a different way, right? It may not fill your pockets, but it fills your soul, right? It fills your heart. And so I started to volunteer at Harvey Milk High School. I proposed an after school improvisation class, and it was awesome. I mean, the kids really got into it, and they were like, I would, you know, do short form improv with them, and they would start to like, so funny. Like, and just like giving an opportunity and space for people to tell their stories and to cut loose was like, reminded me the power of what we do as theater artists, right? It reminds me of that power every day. Like, and I was working at the same time with Drama Club, which is an organization that teaches theater in juvenile detention centers. And so I was going in there like once or twice a week to teach theater up at Horizons Juvenile Detention Center in the Bronx with Josie Whittlesey, who created the program. And, you know, it was like just starting out the program. And I brought in the idea of, I said, what if we teach improv here? And that alone is like, there's something great about improv because you're working with what people already know. You're working at the top of everyone's intelligence, right? I'm not trying to like bring in Shakespeare or which, you know, like there is validity in that. But, you know, I was really interested in like, what do they know that we can sort of like, what stories do they have that they can bring and we can work with, you know? So I think that's one of the rules of improv is like working at the top of your intelligence, right? And I think was powerful, is when you, as a powerful tool to give to people, is to be like, cool, my story is valid, and it can be used in storytelling, and it can be heard, and I'm able to craft and work in this way. And that was really, really exciting. And then we sort of developed that into working with text, you know, and I brought in Luis Alfaro's Oedipus el Rey, and we did a staged reading of it. And yeah, it was awesome. I casted this queer woman to play Oedipus, and she killed it. I mean, she killed it, and it was great, you know, and she walked off stage and was like, that was awesome. I want to do that again, you know, and that was really cool. And like, and that's the power of theater, of the arts. And I really hope that more money can go towards it, that more teachers can be funded to do this type of work and in these organizations, because I feel like if I could tell my story, right, and take my pain and my trauma and my childhood and turn it into a solo show, then like I want to be able to give that back to the youth, right? I want to be able to give that back to the youth, like, and say, hey, your story is valid, right? Your story is to be told or can be told if you're, you know, why not?
No, I completely agree with you. I too did volunteer work at Harvey Milk, and there is nothing more gratifying than, I had them write their life story or something close to it. And then in the late afternoon, one day they all performed it in front of the school. And there was nothing, it filled me with such love and admiration. And, some of the kids, just didn't get it and didn't care, but there was about 60-70% of them that dug right in and just loved every second of it. They loved telling their story and being part of something, part of the ensemble. What is your hope for young kids in the arts now? Where do you, I mean, so much funding is being cut left and right, and there's so little left in these schools for any arts.
Yeah, my hope is that it doesn't get cut, right? That we, that organizations, and I think that like turning to people who have the resources to be able to provide resources for the youth is really key. I mean, if you have time or you have money, like why for to like helping people, right? In like the youth specifically, it's like, I mean, I mean, I can't tell you, like, I've learned and I grew immensely as an artist doing that. And I feel like so often they reminded me of the power of theater, and reminded me of the power of doing this stuff. It's a privilege to be able to do it. It is a privilege to be able to like call myself a theater artist and make a living off of it. And I was like, and like also theater can feel so distant for youth, especially like youth who come from like marginalized neighborhoods. It can feel so distant. It's like, if there's an initiative where theaters can offer like either free tickets or discounted tickets to youth, maybe not in high schools, that can literally save somebody's life, right? Like, and I mean that on like a spiritual level, that can spiritually save somebody. It saved me. Like theater saved me. Doing theater saved me. And I want people to remember that like you can change somebody's life, and it doesn't take. Sometimes it takes, one ticket or a generosity or volunteering a time or something. It's like you can offer that. I remember taking some students to see Oedipus Rex in Chicago when Luis and I were doing it there. And my student said to me, he's like, after the show, he was like, I didn't know theater could be so fun. I thought it was like stuffy Shakespeare stuff. And it was like, that to me was a win. It's a win. If like a student from, Humboldt Park, Chicago could come and see themselves reflected on stage for an hour, then that's a win,
Yeah, storytelling and representation is, to me, the key to healing. Because when people really start to see themselves and really start to respect other people, because they get to authentically see other people, as opposed to seeing other people through a white gaze or seeing other people through a cisgendered gaze, just really authentically seeing people and understanding, we can change the world. So the work that you're doing, I am so, so thrilled that you're here to share it with us. I am so thrilled that you continue on and you're continuing to invite other people to be a part of the process, because we need it. We need a healing like yesterday.
Yes, definitely. It's like, give people humanity, give them their humanity, like treat them as that, as such.
So Arturo, what could you, for our listeners out there that can give their time and volunteer, what do you recommend besides the Harvey Milk School? What other organizations have you worked with, or who would you like to work with in terms of giving back to the community?
Yeah, I think, the center is a really great place. I met the director of the center, and it's like somebody I'm trying to keep in touch with so I can figure out ways to volunteer there. Drama Club is a cool organization. Oye Group is a cool organization that I learned about recently, which also works with youth in prisons and also in the community.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one?
Yeah, Oye Group, OYE.
OYE.
Yeah, learned about them myself, and but I know that they're out there doing the work, so I want to shout them out. If you're in Chicago, I worked with About Face Youth Theater, which was really great. I worked with Voice of the City. I worked with After School Matters. I worked with Pedro Luis Campos Puerto Rican High School in Humboldt Park. In Chicago, in New York, Drama Club and Harvey Milk High School. I know that there's some organizations. I need to look them up in New Haven that I had taught with this one organization in New Haven, a couple classes. But there's also ways in which you can support young artists who are trying to get into the arts. And I know that the Encompass Collective, which was founded by some Yaleys, which are committed to providing like affordable, like high level classes to youth of color or to people of color in the city, is also a great way, because there are also like a plethora of people who are like immigrants or moving, who can't afford these sort of like very expensive classes, for acting or self-tape or anything else. They're a really great organization, Encompass Collective, and they provide a ton of classes. And so, yeah, I think that those are ways to help. Those are places like, you can consider volunteering or finding ways to help fund or anything else. And then I would say if you're able to afford a bunch of tickets, like buy some tickets and offer them up to a school somewhere, like why not buy like 20 tickets to go see Sanctuary City and give them to Harvey Milk and see what students want to go over there. That is a way of helping as well.
Yeah, you never know what youth would see a piece of theater or go to a piece of theater and can change their life and completely speak to them.
I really appreciate that. That was one thing I really appreciated about working with Rattlestick, was the pay what you can nights. It's like a minimum of $1, and you can come and see a play, and that makes a difference. It's like sometimes if you're thinking about like I gotta eat or I'm gonna spend $40 on a play, it's like you're gonna make a choice that that is like
$40 is cheap, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat. So if you have the opportunity to help in those ways, I think it's great.
Yeah, Rattlestick is an incredible theater, an incredible organization, and they do things right.
Yeah, thank you.
Really
Yeah, they're great. Yeah,
they do. So what's coming up for you? I know you're working on this play, Novias.
Novios, yeah, and
Novios,
yeah. No worries.
Horrific.
No worries.
I'll edit that.
No,
Novios.
Novios is this play that I've been working on for a couple of years, and I'm still in development with it. Hopefully we'll be able to get a workshop of it, and I'll be able to like really get it to where I would like to see it. It's been really cool. And then I'm also working, I have to finish up my TV writing mentorship program with Hillman Grad Productions, and that ends in November. And so we have our showcase out there. So I'm like feverishly working on my TV pilot, and I'm trying to get it up to at a better standard coming off of Nimi Madre. So I'm working on that, and
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
What's your showcase as a writer like?
I'm about to find out. I don't know. This is my first time ever. This is my first time ever showcasing as a writer. So it's like, Nimi Madre was a lesson in like what does it mean to be a playwright, and like how does one navigate this industry or this world as a playwright. TV Hillman Grad is my sort of like first sort of peek into TV writing, and so I don't know what to expect, but I think it's like they'll showcase like 6 minutes of a scene from my pilot with actors from the program, and I guess literary agents and managers and other people will be able to see it.
Let me big you up just for a second, because I know what Hillman Grad is, but I know a lot of people don't, and I also know that a lot of our listeners may not. So it's a big deal to have been selected as a Hillman Grad. So do you want to talk about what that is a little bit?
Sure. So Hillman Grad, the mentorship program was created by Lena Waith and Rishi, who both run and are, the the heads of the Hillman Grad Productions, which is Lena Waithe's production company, they created this program to provide opportunities for artists of color in the TV industry to get like mentorship. So to be like TV writing mentors or executive mentees, so TV writing mentees, executive mentees, and acting mentees. And it's basically to provide like opportunities to, you know, artists of color within the TV industry who don't often get opportunities either staffed in writing rooms or on, you know, acting on TV shows and everything else. So they created this mentorship program. This is the inaugural class. So this is the first year that they're doing it. And there are 10 actors, 10 writers, and 5 executives. And the way that it works is the TV writers, we spend the first 20 weeks sort of developing our own pilot with our mentor collectively. So we're all in the same class. We meet once a week. And then the first 20 weeks, we sort of develop our own TV pilot. And then the next 10 weeks, we do like a writer's room with one writer each week. And we sort of collectively give feedback. And then we spend the next 10 weeks doing table reads of the pilot, of each pilot with the actors in the actor track. And it culminates in a showcase for the industry in LA, where the writers will be showcasing their scenes with the actors acting in them, and the executives have partnered with the writers in order to develop, like in the last 10 weeks, to develop the piece together to bring to showcase. So what I find exciting about it is, because I come from the theater, and theater is super collaborative, is the way in which we're sort of working together, you know, working with the actors and the executives to build this this showcase, which is really exciting. It is the first year that they're doing it, so I think we're all figuring out what exactly the showcase is going to be, especially in a COVID world. You know, can people gather and see this? Is it all going to be online? I think there's a lot of questions they're navigating, but it's been a really, really exciting challenge this past year. It started in February, it ends in November. It's been an exciting challenge. It's pushed me immensely as a writer, as a creator, and forced me to think outside of theater a period of time, which is, I come from the theater. I'm a child of the theater. I'm like born and raised in the theater. So to like step out of it for a moment and go, okay, this is TV. It's a really interesting challenge as a writer and as an artist to think visually, and to think like how these things can sort of piece together.
That's really exciting. Good for you. I hope it goes beautifully. You're a very talented young man, and we're both very grateful that you spent this hour with us. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming out. Joshua Safran said, my first chance to see Arturo was at Yale in the takeoff of Merchant of Venice, called Everything That Never Happened, in which he played the best Shylock I'd ever seen, anything but stuffy Shakespeare. And so I wanted to ask Turo about how bringing humanity to characters unlike him had further shaped his ability to play characters that overtly bring so much of him to them.
Well, thank you. I know Josh back in Yale, and I think, you know, it's bringing humanity is our job, right? It's like, as an actor, it's your job, right, to be empathetic, you know, if you and to not judge your character, right? And so I think that that's true, whether it's a character similar to me or a character further away from me. And sometimes playing characters closer to you are harder, because it means they get it real in there, and you're trying to, you know. But I think it's our job, right? You know, like, it is your job to not judge them, and to bring as much humanity to them as possible, to understand their gaping hole and why they do the things that they do, you know. And to, like, in every moment, what is that person hoping to get to fill this gaping hole inside? What are they hoping to get? It's like good, bad, whatever judgment words we want to put on them. they are there doing, and they believe 100% that they are doing the right thing in order to get something, to feel something inside. And I think that I learned in my process of working on Mi Madre with my mother, and not only in humanizing her, but it allowed me to humanize my dad and my other people in my life. It allows me to also humanize a character like Shylock, you know, because in that play, Everything That Never Happened, he is fighting so hard for his daughter, you know, and if you can latch onto that, what a father is fighting for his daughter, and the respect, and for those things, those are things that make us all human. Whether you put us in, you know, Venice, or you put us in Chicago, you know, that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for a little bit of that humanity, respect, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be respected, you know. That's true of every character.
That's a great way to end this. Thank you, Joshua, for that question. Thank you, Arturo, for spending time with us. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
You're a really talented young man, and I can't wait to see what's next. Joy,
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you. It's been wonderful hearing you share your stories and your experience. And I wish you all the best. I can't wait to see what is next for you.
And
Thank
I
you.
want to meet your mother. So
Yeah.
you set that up. Maybe I'll do a live at the Lortel with your mom.
Oh my God, she would love
You
it.
would love it, right?
She would resist it the whole way and then love it.
God,
Are you kidding me? An hour for her to talk about all the things. Are you kidding me? She would love it, and then
yeah, go ahead.
And I was saying she'd love it, and then she'd probably take you to the bar afterwards, and then she'd continue to tell you more and more over a glass of wine, you know.
Yeah, you know, I'm from a Jewish background, and my mother is not much different. So yeah, I saw a little bit of her, and I saw a little bit of my mother in your portrayal, and it scared the hell out of me, except for this thing. Anyway,
the flow,
the flow. Yeah. That's our show. Next week, Joy and I interview Natasha Yvette Williams. Natasha's credits include Broadway, the West End, regional theaters across the country. We will talk about her amazing career as well as her involvement with Black Theatre United. On October 18th, we will interview actor, writer, activist Ronaldo Pinella. In addition to his numerous off-Broadway credits, he currently serves on the Council of the Episcopal Actors Guild, a non-sectarian charitable organization that provides food and financial assistance to actors in need. In addition, he co-runs Youth on Stage, a free youth theater training program for young people from underserved communities across the country. More information about these and future guests and how to attend our recordings online can be found at live@thelortel.com. Thank you for joining us. Remember, get vaccinated, wear a mask, and be safe. We hope to see you soon and in the theater soon. Have a really good night. Thank you again, Arturo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.